Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Quigley on Divorce, a behind-the-scenes look. I'm your host, James Quigley, and glad to be back. It's been a little while with the COVID shutdown, kind of shut down the podcasting a little bit as well. I'm joined today again by one of my regulars, the outstanding, the venerable Jordan Rosenberg, part of the team. Glad to have you with us again, Jordan.
Thanks, James, as always.
So once again, we appear virtually. We've done a few of these, whereas in the past we'd be in the conference room at our beautiful offices. But, with the things the way they are, we're just trying to take advantage of technology. And today, I think what we're going to talk about is just 6+ months into the coronavirus and the impacts on us as divorce lawyers and our practice, and kind of what we've seen, what's been working, what's not been working. Jordan, I think we're fairly unique even within our firm. We all have different kind of teams within our firm, and everybody kind of does things their way, whatever works best for their team. Our team has been pretty integrated back into the firm since I'd probably say sometime back in June. Would you agree, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually been really nice. And although there are obviously some outstanding concerns for everybody, I think that our firm specifically has done an amazing job of sort of trying to reintegrate people and making that a safe environment. And for example, we're, just like every other public space, as we're capping capacity, everybody's wearing masks in public spaces, and there's hand sanitizer and, alcohol alcohol wipes basically wherever you can see. So I definitely feel comfortable, and really it's sort of just a nice change of pace to leave the house and get in your car, go to work, kiss my wife and kid, and kind of come back at the end of the day, and just kind of reminds me that there is normal life out there. And I mean, it's been a positive experience for me.
Yeah, and I think it's been interesting. We actually just this week we had a client who really preferred to meet with us in person. And so we did, as you mentioned, all of the social distancing requirements. And we actually have a policy within our office where we're asking individuals who are interested in coming in and meeting with us to sign a waiver, just making sure everybody understands that we don't control what happens, but we are doing what we can to control within the office, like you said, with all of the personal protective equipment. And I think we wish we would have bought stock in these hand sanitizer companies, but I would agree with you, Jordan. I think it has been good for us in terms of just, I think, the mental health and the morale of our team, being able to work together. There's a camaraderie that on our team at Beermann is really part of what makes us effective. Is we're able to collaborate. We're able to walk next door into someone's office and say, man, I've got this really unique issue. What do you think about it? And we've got these great legal minds that are able to come together and really kind of work at the team concept, which is what we employ for pretty much all the cases we have.
Right. And I mean, family law is so personal. And so not even does that include internally as a team, but I mean, even with our clients, with that ability to meet with us and sit face to face. I mean, it's just a different feeling to meet someone in person, sit across a desk from them, even if they have a mask on and, they take whatever precautions they do and we do, it still sort of maintains that feeling of personal connection. And it's just so much more you can feel from someone and get accomplished, I think, meeting directly in person rather than over Zoom, which I think fortunately, but unfortunately has sort of become the norm. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit in terms of how we've seen that in our practice.
So I think another big part of not only the practice that we experience, Jordan, is court. What are some of the things that, if we're all virtual, we're in court on these Zooms, 50, 60 lawyers appear in the morning sometimes. What would you say tell me what you think is working, what's not working from an efficiency standpoint. What do you like? What don't you like?
Yeah, I know, and you probably take a different position than I on a lot of this stuff, James. But it's really changed the entire game. And just like you were saying, is the morning court calls where historically we'd be in the courtroom and there'd be 50, 60 people physically in the courtroom and the agreed order line, stepping up before a judge. Now we see a screen literally with 60 boxes, and the judge calls the case, and whomever's on the case kind of unmutes and says whatever they need to say in the judge or with the judge. And what I think is working is I think it really makes sort of more mundane things way more efficient. So for example, a lot of the times when we had an agreement and we actually had to go to court and there really wasn't any, contest and we were just kind of presenting the agreement and updating the judge for his status, that would take sometimes over an hour. And while it still takes definitely some time, it definitely has streamlined the process whereby now we can email orders instead of, old school handwrite on carbon paper. And it just really streamlines it because the judge kind of wants to move through the virtual call as quickly as possible. Where I don't think is working, and I think I'll align with you in this, is really contested issues where there's evidence that's being presented, where there's exhibits, where there's argument, because again, sort of that in-person feeling, you bring your charisma, you bring your persuasion, you bring everything with you in person in your presence. And through Zoom, I think we've sort of joked, James, is it's almost like the great equalizer, where if you're literally just a head in a box making arguments, it just seems way less effective. And I think even just with exhibits and in that vein, it's really just, it's sort of, you really have to be tech savvy to share your screen and have everything super duper organized. And I think it provides a little less improvise sort of in the process. And I think you have to be more scripted and more organized. So.
Well, I got to tell you, one of the things that drives me nuts about this Zoom is you might be able to hear it in the background. Here I am trying to work remotely from my condo, and I got somebody who's drilling their balcony next door, putting in new doors. And so there's so many things that, if I'm home at times and the dog walks in and you're distracted with the dog, or, the kids are doing something, I much prefer to be in an office. I'm and certainly from the litigation standpoint, I've been doing this over 28 years, and part of what I think helps, me to be successful is certain interpersonal skills, a presence, whatever, like you mentioned, Jordan, persuasion. We all have different techniques we use. And when you're relegated to you and I in a gray box here, there's not a lot to distinguish you from another attorney. Whereas in presence, I think you have a lot more to add. So I think from the standpoint of it being better than nothing, I'll give you that. But I mean, Jordan, we've been on trial for this past week. How do you think that the actual, and this is a contested trial, child-related issues at stake, we've got documents we need to use. What are your perspectives on, we've only gotten 2 or 3 days into the trial and we've got probably 3 or 4 more days. How do you feel about a contested trial so far via Zoom?
It's definitely a new experience. And just kind of going back is, I think some of the judges actually in some counties are actually sort of starting to entertain in-person hearing statuses. I know in McHenry County, they do in-person status calls. I know in some of the other collar counties, that's starting to happen, including DuPage. And I think Cook and Lake are sort of the last to fall in line. But that the evidentiary issue in this case, I mean, it's just different. I mean, it's just so different. And do I like it? In some ways I like it. In others, I really don't. And, I kind of align with you, James, and it's like being in the courtroom, bringing everybody involved in the case. I think it's really easy to get distracted and not be as, looped into what's happening and being attentive and, looking for things on the fly. I mean, I think it's really different. And, I think it impacts the judges too. And I think the judges kind of, just like we're trying to make arguments from a little gray box, the judges themselves are, looking at 5 little gray boxes. And, it's just different. It's just really different.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's frustrating to me is I'm examining a witness, there's the talking over on Zoom and how that gets complicated sometimes. You really, like when you're in person, you can really assess someone's demeanor and their their reaction, and that lends itself to the credibility of the witnesses. I think all that stuff is so important in real time for a judge to see when a person kind of squirms a little bit in their chair, or they roll their eyes, or do these things. And some of the things you can see on a computer, some you can't. I think the way we've done it has been been helpful. In other words, Jordan, where you and Jared Pincus on our team, we were together physically in our office, so that during an examination we can pause and I can talk with you, I can consult with you guys. You guys can shoot documents at me. I can, really work the way we would during a trial. So I think that's been super helpful for us to at least be together physically. But I think I think things are starting to trend in the, Jordan, we have a trial in January where that's going to be in person up in Lake County. So I think that's where things are trending towards, because I think they're recognized for these kind of contested matters. It's just not the same. People need their day in court, which is literally in court. And that's something that's very important to our practice.
Yeah, one question I have for you, James, is, and I've been getting the same question probably over and over and over from my peers, my friends, my family, is really have the amount of divorces increased during this COVID time? And basically, has the process in terms of handling a divorce changed, other than what we've been talking about through Zoom?
Yeah, no, I think those are good questions. I think that it really is. There's been an increase, but initially, obviously, there was a decrease. So I think I would say just, and I didn't keep real stats on this, but I think from the period of March, April, May, pretty slow, a drop. June, July picking up, and I think now what you're seeing kind of end of summer, kids, with school issues and parents struggling to figure out the work-life balance with kids at home. I think the tensions are just increasing. I think people's mental health issues are at their peak, and I think it's lending itself to an increase, at least in terms of what we've seen within the office. So in terms of cases, I think it's, unfortunately, I've heard some statistics that someone had told me, and I didn't check to know if it's true or not, but someone said there's been a 38% increase in new filings and since the coronavirus. And so, and I don't know, again, if that's true or not, but it's kind of consistent with what we're seeing in our practice. So that's unfortunate. It's, but as far as us and the way we handle, really nothing's changed. I mean, we had an initial consultation this week where the client had mentioned wanted to meet in person, which I thought was refreshing. A lot of times we'll do a Zoom like this. Paperwork, everything is electronic. Our team is intact. All the players of the team do what they need to do. Discovery still going out. We're still sending subpoenas. We've even, as you know, Jordan, even this week have taken some depositions. So taking depositions, we're doing everything mechanically that we would always do, and doing it at a very high level, but it's just in most instances not in person. I think even mediation, mediation is something where it's a big part of all of our practices these days, and there aren't too many mediators that are willing to do in-person mediation. So
and I mean, even just to piggyback off that, I mean, what I've heard from others is that mediation has actually been very successful through Zoom, through the use of breakout rooms and other tools, because really it doesn't require that presence. And if you can remove emotion and that presence and the physical presence of your partner, and really just focus on the content and what's being presented, that's what I've found actually very, very efficient and helpful through Zoom and through this process, is mediation and other sort of settlement discussions and meetings and things like that, rather than contest through courts.
Yeah, I think that's, again, it goes to your earlier point where I think there are some efficiencies that we've discovered and some inefficiencies. And so, I sort of reject this notion that you hear people say, oh, we're not going back to normal, maybe ever again, or it's going to be 2 more years. I just don't see that. I had a conversation with one of the judges, who was kind of informally polling lawyers after the cases just to get thoughts. And I had mentioned to the judge, I said, I would like to think that I practice law the same way Abraham Lincoln practiced law. And that's, I don't see that changing. I said, the difference is, I have more horsepower in my automobile and he rode a horse to the courthouse. So there's, but that's, I think there's a personal element to the justice system. It's really necessary. I think the human condition, I think what we're experiencing, Jordan, on our team within the office is, people need people. People need that connection. People thrive off that connection. I mean, we may have talked about it on another podcast, but you and I and some of the guys in the office, Jordan, sometimes we're just, there's something that you got to burn some stress. So we get the football out and we're throwing the football across the office, or, baseball, just, when you're at home and you're in a room and your door's closed because you got other things going on in your condo or your house or whatever, and you can't get that stress release that you might need in the moment. You can't have that commiseration with someone on your team. So I don't know. I think I feel like this has been a significant hit for everybody. I think we've been blessed in that I don't want to say we've weathered the storm, but I think for the worst part of it, I think we have, as a firm, as a team. We as a firm, a lot of our competitors actually laid off lawyers, partners, staff people. We at Beermann did not. We didn't lay off anybody, and so we were very fortunate for that. So we were built strongly. We, survived the worst part of this. And I think we're coming out of this better than ever.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to sort of be the fly in the ointment and someone that's a contrarian to that, because I share in that optimism. I hope and pray that one day we're back to full normal. I don't agree in as much as we're going to be. I think a lot of this has brought about some much needed changes to the court system. And I think that in a lot of ways it was sort of antiquated in terms of process and procedure. Like I was talking about earlier, when you leave a court date, you walk out with a paper copy on a carbon paper order. It's 2020 to now shift to an email format to email orders in and stuff like that. I mean, that is a welcome change, I believe. But I agree with the in-person contact, and I agree that that's critical in family law, especially. But I think that moving forward, I think we're going to probably see a hybrid of things that are in person and then things that are via Zoom.
Yeah, I think I don't disagree with that, but I think, to me, that just goes to court reform. There's been inefficiencies in our system for a long time. We've complained about it. We live with it. We deal with it. And so I think maybe this forces, the states, the counties, the municipalities to deal with these issues where maybe had this not happened, bureaucracies the way they are, you limp along, there's no money for this, there's no time for this, and things never get done, they never get changed. So I think with forcing this upon us, it's caused us to take a look at this and see, hey, how do we use this in a much better way? How do we take some of the things, like you said, simple agreed orders? Why couldn't we email those in? Of course we could. Why can't we have printers in or computers in and Wi-Fi in courtrooms so that with your laptop you can draft the order, it can be emailed on the spot instead of handwriting it? We've had so many situations where we'll draft an order and the other lawyer says, I don't like this, and they got their pen and they scratch all over it. And the judge says, what is this mess? Rewrite the order. You could set up, both parties could email their copies of the order. The judge could right then edit the order that the way he likes it or she likes it and says, this is the order I'm entering. So agree, there's a lot of ways where technology can be finally brought into the court systems and the courthouses in a way that really can make our practice a little smoother. But, I think normal in the sense that, people that are bunkered down and, not leaving their homes, not going to offices, not going to courthouses. I think that's changing in the near future. I think in the coming, and again, I'm not going to get political on this, but I think when the election's over, get into the new year, I think we're going to start to see things. We already got, like you said, our trial scheduled for January. It's going to be in person. And for me, it's going to be a welcome relief. And I don't know what the requirements will be in terms of wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. If you're sitting at your table and you're 6 feet away, can you take your mask off so that the witness can actually hear? I think the way a lot of the courthouses are set up, where the witness box is from where the judge sits, and the judge is usually elevated, that's usually, easily 6 feet away. So it'll be interesting to see how some of the CDC requirements work their way into, the in-person courthouse. But, I'm hoping, maybe I'm a little more optimistic than most, but I think we're heading in that direction.
I hope so too.
So, but listen, I think this part of the impetus for Jordan, you and I, to have this conversation was, I think you have a lot of people out there that are just wondering, like, what's going on. The people that are already in litigation, that have cases pending, I think they've unfortunately been sort of the guinea pigs in all of this, because there was, literally a couple months where literally nothing happened. We did things what we needed to do behind the scenes within the office, discovery, and so forth. But I think this has been really an evolutionary process. It's been tough. I think there's a backlog. I think a lot of cases, Jordan, you and I started a case March 16th. We wheeled in our boxes, set for trial. We did some preliminary motions, some pretrial matters, and that afternoon the judge said, we're done.
Yep.
March 16th. That's the case that's going to trial in January. So for those of you that are listening and watching and wondering, well, what is, he says there's a backlog, what does that mean? Well, a case that started trial in March of 2020 will now actually proceed, unless other circumstances, but in January of 2021. So
right.
That's a case that was pending.
Yeah, and here's the Zoom talk over. No, I'm just, and just from another perspective, I have a very simple uncontested divorce where we simply just drafted the documents, memorialized it, and that was probably mid, September, I would say. And everything was signed. We submitted it to the court for, for approval, and we need obviously a prove up date. And they go, okay, see you, mid-November. I'm like, 2 months. Ordinarily in the regular scheme of court, it's, we'll see you in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or subject to the judge's schedule. But things are so backed up that it literally may take up to 2 months or more just to memorialize and finalize an agreement that's been signed for 2 months.
Yeah, and that to me is one that it's a head scratcher, because I look and I say, that's where one of the areas I actually think the technology could really, really improve the practice for everybody. Prove-ups. When a case is finalized, deal done, marital settlement agreement, allocation judgment with the kids, it's all signed, ready to be finalized. The prove-up is the process you go before the judge and memorialize the agreement of the parties. Historically, that's always been in person. You go there, you're on a list of 10, 20, 30 other prove-ups, and it's sort of a first come, first serve. So sometimes you'd go to the courthouse for the prove-up, which takes about 10 or 15 minutes, but you'd be there for an hour and a half. And you're billing the client for that time. It's wildly inefficient. So in my thinking, why wouldn't you schedule 15 to 20 minute, maybe 20 minute slots so you could have 10 or 20 of them each morning, bang, bang, bang. People, you don't have drive time going to a courthouse or walking to a courthouse. You don't have the lag of sitting there. By the way, if you miss your 20-minute window, too bad. You go to the end of the line, then you have to wait, but that's your fault. And so I think, the fact that that's backed up as far as it is, it's shocking to me.
Yeah.
Like you said, sometimes you could get a prove update within a week.
Right.
But certainly 2 weeks to 3 weeks. And so, it's justice delayed is justice denied in many cases. And so there's things that are happening real time. I'll segue into one more thing, Jordan, with us too, which has just been bizarre. With the Zoom and with the emails, we're now having these email communications with judges. We're sending directly some judges, they say, send it to me. They'll respond to us. We've had, judges almost decide stuff over email without any hearings, just going, completely rogue when it relates to procedure, the rules that are in place, due process, allowing evidentiary hearings, and just almost sort of casually saying, oh yeah, this makes sense. So that's the other thing that's very concerning to me, is there seems to be, I've seen some communications where, we're not allowed to communicate directly with the judge, but judges are engaging in communication with us. Other lawyers are sending things directly. It's just, I'm a little troubled by the lax nature of kind of this process too, where, there's these communications going back and forth. Sometimes you're on Zoom and, some judges say, hey, they expect us to put a suit and tie on when we're on Zoom, but then there are other judges on their end where they're not wearing their robes. They're sitting in their living room, or a kitchen. So it's just, I think some of the informality that we're seeing through all of this, I don't prefer, that's me personally, I prefer a degree of formality. I mean, I think the court, there are rules, there are procedures, there are local rules, there are a lot of Supreme Court rules. All of these things, we as practitioners rely on, saying, if we can't tell our clients these are the rules and we can count on those rules being followed, it kind of becomes the wild, wild west, and we've seen that in some of our cases.
Yeah, and not to sort of beat a dead horse on I'm just a piggyback, but really, it's the lack of uniformity, I think. And it's, every county handles cases differently. Every judge handles cases differently. The communication with judges is different. And just like you're saying, I mean, some judges you literally interact with through email, and others, go through my coordinator, set a date. I mean, it is sort of the wild, wild west, so to speak, because there really is no firm statewide rules in terms of communication, decorum, and procedure in terms of these Zoom protocols.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I think the point of this discussion for those that are, kind of watching and listening is to understand a couple of things, that in one sense, it's business as usual. We are handling family law cases. We are doing everything we need to do to get results for our clients and to get them through the system. It's just that the system, which had many flaws to begin with, has gotten a little more complicated. We've adjusted, and I think for me, as a guy turning 54 this month, I feel as though, as best I can, I've adapted to this out of necessity. Hasn't been my preference. I haven't enjoyed it, but I understand I have to get results for our clients. I have to work together with my team in whatever the rules of engagement are. So I think we've done well with that, despite it not being my preference. But there still remains some uncertainty. And I think even with you and I, Jordan, just talking today, we kind of see the world maybe a little differently in terms of what's ahead and what's going to change, what's not going to change. And so I think going into a divorce, or if you're in a divorce, there's a level of patience and understanding that's required that none of us ask for any of this stuff. And a lot of stuff has been forced upon us, some of which we don't individually agree with. And so trying to sort of navigate through what's been thrust upon us, what our instincts tell us we should be able to do or what we want to do, there's a balance in all of that. And so I think what we will continue to do is, work within whatever the rules are that are placed in front of us, and at the same time, work with our clients to help them understand a fundamental premise for us, which is always, let's try to stay out of court anyway. Let's try to get to a resolution. Let's get you through this very difficult, very painful process of divorce sooner rather than later, because whether you're in person or on a Zoom, when we, Jordan, you and I and our team, when we're engaged, it's costing clients money. It's creating acrimony. It's because there is discord, there's a disagreement, there's an inability to cooperate, to collaborate, there's a lack of transparency, all of these things that this is, at times why we have to have litigation. But still, keep that in mind. I think, if you have an ability to work with like a mediator, you said before, Jordan, even if it's remote, try to explore that, try to negotiate things outside of this virtual court world. It's always going to be in your best interest. So, and I guess just in closing, we want to make sure that everyone's aware that we are available always for consulting with individuals. I think Jordan and I are both using our cell phones a lot more than we ever did, because we have to be accessible to people. And the way our office is set up, people email us and those emails get sent to our phones. And it's just from a tech standpoint, we're always available. And so we want to make sure that you're aware that we're here for you. We'll continue to fight for you. I think you're going to see some interesting announcements coming from Beermann in the coming weeks or months, where you're going to see some of the additions to the firm that we've made. We're really, really excited actually about how our business is growing. And so you're going to see we've got some great people coming in. And so stay tuned for that. But as always, if you need us, you can always contact either me or Jordan or anyone at Beermann. Again, my email address is jmquigley@beermannlaw.com. My direct extension is 312-621-1225. Jordan, if people want to reach you on your direct extension, what's that number?
Sure, 312-262-2567.
So again, thanks so much for following us. We'll, I think, be kind of re-engaging in some more podcasting. There's a lot of issues that are more substantive that we've encountered over the last 6 months that we'd like to talk about. Jordan and I are going to be lecturing again coming soon, and we've got trials coming up. And so there's a lot to discuss, a lot of information we want to share with you guys. But as always, thanks for joining us on Quigley on Divorce, a behind the scenes look. And we hope to hear from you. Take care.
Thanks, James.